video's been a little bit in the making, but I'm going to show you how to make my recipe for ginger beer. It's fairly cheap, it's fairly simple, it's not perfect, it's a bit rough, but by the end of it, it's an entirely palatable drink with a bit of booze in it. So, simple ginger beer. The ingredients you require are sugar, ginger, yeast, and water. If you can spare the couple bucks, a bit of yeast nutrient goes a long way. As you can see, I have my sugar, my ginger, my water, my yeast nutrient here. The equipment that you require is a fermenting vessel. This can be any size, I'd say no smaller than 2 litres and no larger than 20 litres. This recipe really only works for home quantities up to about 20 litres, which is a large bucket. You need an airlock. Some of them look like this, other ones look a bit different. They will all work, and if you don't have access to an airlock, you can look up a thing called a blow-off tube and that'll work just fine. But really necessary. You'll need a sieve. This is particular to this recipe, but it is required. And you'll need a blender or a juicer of some description, and necessary for this recipe. There might be 1 or 2 other things, but that should just make sense, and you probably have them around your house anyway. So on the optional side, you have a hydrometer. If you want to know how much booze is in your ginger beer, you can absolutely work that out with one of these. Very, very handy. But ultimately not necessary. And a bit controversial is sanitizer. I highly recommend using sanitizer. It just gives you an extra layer of safety, that all your effort isn't for vain. Get a nice spray bottle, works great, no issues. But if you just do a really good clean, the way this recipe works is it's almost sort of self-sanitizing. It'll make sense when you see it. Get the sanitizer, just do it. But if you can't, just try and keep everything clean. So the way that this recipe works is it's really on ratio. This is the ratio down for 1 litre. So we'd use a gram of yeast, 120 grams of sugar, and 45 grams of ginger for 1 litre. And today in my 5 litre fermentation vessel, I'll be using 5 grams of yeast, 600 grams of sugar, as you can see, 225 grams of ginger, and that will make up 5 litres. And I'll just use some yeast nutrient. So, we're going to do our first step here, which is to clean everything. I've already had a quick go at this in the kitchen, but this is why I say sanitization, super important. Anything that you are working with that's going to come in contact with your final product, just sanitize it. This stuff is cheap, just do it. Even if it might only come in contact with it for a second, sanitize it, let it dry. Airlock. Absolutely. Stay upside down. Sieve. This stuff is fairly safe to just be spraying around. It's a really dilute acid that just sanitizes stuff. Don't need to rinse it off, it should just dry and flash off fairly quickly. Again, anything that it's called a must, anything that your sort of in-progress product will ever come in contact with, just sanitize it. So, now that that is pretty much done, we are going to move on to the next step. So, everything has been cleaned. We go into mixing stuff. So, I have here approximately 225 grams of ginger. It's about the size of 2 fists. Just going to break it up into little bits and pop it in my blender. If you don't break it up into little bits, it might have trouble with it, but just do it in small portions and I'm sure it will be fine. A bit of water doesn't go astray, so just give me one moment. This not a huge deal to sanitize because you're just putting the ginger into it and you can't really sanitize ginger. And it also is self-sanitized in a following step, as you'll see. I'll explain it when I come to it. You want to use as little water as you can here. You want to have like a pasty type thing almost. So, sorry, apologize to headphone users. Slurry is the word I was looking for. It needs to be a slurry. Relatively done. That sanitizer solution. Ooh, want to make sure we get it in the bottom as well. Really take your time and care with this, because the more time you spend on this, the more chance you have of having a positive ginger beer experience. That's it. So, ginger beer is all handy there. Sugar, 600 grams. Just pour it into your fermentation vessel. Then, place your sieve over your fermentation vessel, or get a friend to hold it. Just be careful, we're dealing with some hot water here very soon. Then, take your ginger mix. You want to empty it right into the center of the sieve. And that's pretty ideal. This is not complicated stuff. If it looks right, it's probably right. So, now on to this self-sanitization step, which is part of the mix. Woo-wee, that's a boil. Just pour it over. So my sort of theory with this is that you want to try and cover as much ginger as you can, and this is simultaneously extracting sort of the ginger essence and also providing heat to at least pasteurize any nasties that were in there to begin with. One second, I need to boil this up again. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to take this time for your second boil to just get an implement. Sanitize it. If you don't have access to sanitizer, just clean it as best you can. Hot boiling water does wonders. But take this opportunity so if you can sort of mix it around, make sure that sugar at the bottom gets incorporated nice and evenly. It's very easy to forget that step. I have done it many times. You want this to be a homogeneous mixture. You don't want any sediment at the bottom. I've used a chopstick in the past and that works quite well. You don't use anything glass and shatter. But this will be hot, so take care. And that's about done, I think, as far as I care to mix it any further. this opportunity to put a yeast nutrient in there. I use about 1/4 of a teaspoon. It's, as far as I know, it's just like just goodness for the little yeasties. I'm not a yeastologist. It is just good for the yeast, I've heard, and I trust that. Boiling water, we knew it took so long. So there's going to be a bit of a time skip later on because we can't put the yeast in until this is at body temperature. And depending on the size of your yield, that can take anywhere from a couple hours to a day or even 2 days if you're doing a large. I have a plate around here somewhere. So, can't use this before, and I just get quite a bit large, and I have to scale everything up to 20. But same deal, but it took 2 days for everything to cool down, which is not a bad thing. Same rules apply. Lovely. You want to also avoid when you're putting your boiling water in. What is best practice is not to let the sieve get into the must, but probably doesn't matter. It's happened to me once or twice and it's never failed because of it. So there we are. Not long. Cool. Boiled. I think that's just about done. Let's see if I can just pop that in a sink over there. As you see, this is a bit of a haphazard operation, but you'll get the idea. If anything hits the ground, give it a quick rinse. And then give it sanitizer again and she'll be fine. They'll boil it once more and so once everything's been mixed in, you've got that sugar and the ginger and the water, it's a nice homogeneous mixture. You want to bring it up to within a couple centimeters of the rim, because that's your maximum yield now. Again, just use boiling water. Safest, easiest thing. have seen some people do this in bottles. However, I don't think that that's really a good idea. Bulk ferment, just better. Less hassle, less chance of making it wrong. You do one thing right once instead of many things right many times. Good man. Neighbors coming around. Oh, easy. Cooking. It's a really smart idea to stick a spigot onto the bottom of your fermentation vessel. I know it sounds silly, but using a ladle and a funnel sucks, and it's all things you need to sterilize. Just a spigot works pretty well. For like $2 online. Maybe a little more if you're at a homebrew shop, but the homebrew shop will have everything you need. There we go. Just top that up. Cool. It's going good. I'm just going to let this cool down now. I'm going to pop the lid on top. Then my sanitized airlock. Not a bad idea to sanitize your fingers either. And then fill your airlock with just enough water. Or sanitizer solution to function. Now, just need to play the waiting game. I'll put this somewhere out of the way, and we'll probably come back to this tomorrow once it's all cooled down. Thank you. Alright, so we're back here. This has been brewing for about 2 weeks now. The specific gravity has gone down from 1.05 to 1.01. So I think it's getting about ready to bottle, because I want this to be quite dry and I want to have bottle carbonation, so I still need some sugar in the must. So what I've done, I've got my sanitizer solution, and before I start filming this, I have my bottles ready. These lovely flip-top ones are really good. Make sure you get ones that are made for home brewing, because the cheap ones at Kmart they will explode. No one wants sugary, broken glass everywhere, so get the proper ones. Worth it. $2, get them secondhand, but proper ones. So what I've done is I've rinsed these out. I've rinsed them out with hot water, and then I've sprayed a bit of sanitizer solution in them. If you don't have a sanitizer solution, just give them a really good shake. Yeah, just get them as clean as you possibly can. And I've also got my fermentation vessel here. You're not sure if you can see it, I have a little bucket here, and this is just really handy because when you're filling stuff up, you just don't want to have mess, and this carpet here is just not good. So I'll just do a gravity reading, and then I'll finish this all off camera. But you know, I figured in for a penny, in for a pound, you're here for the ride. So I've still got a bit of sanitized solution in here, so I'm just going to empty that out. I'm going to give a bit of a spray to the orange seal here. Again, if you don't have the sanitized solution, just get everything as clean as you can. I'm going to take my gravity reading. Champion. Alright, so that's really good. That's it, and then I'm just gonna fill up my bottle. And so this one's now done. Put the cap on there. And this is now done, kind of. I like to take it up to about the neck and just leave some headspace there because it might froth or explode later. Not explode, but froth up when you pop it like a bottle of champagne. So what you can do is I'm going to be leaving this for about 1 or 2 days just at room temperature, so bottle conditions, and gets carbonated just naturally. Then I'm going to do a pasteurization process that I'll be filming as well, so you'll probably watch that in a few seconds. But yes, just simply fill it up to about the shoulder, I think they call it, and then it's done, and you can drink it if you want to. Chilled is probably better. But yeah. I'll finish all this off camera, and then I'll edit it all together, and it'll be nice and cool. Alright, so a bit of a change of angle here, just for filming logistics. So this is the final and honestly optional step. I'm basically going to be running you through how to do a pasteurization. Just like milk or soft drinks or long life food like army rations and stuff. So what this achieves here is, I mentioned earlier about bottle bombs, because when you have an uncontrolled fermentation and there's excess sugar left in your beer, what can happen is the yeast will keep eating, they'll keep farting out gas. The pressure seal on top is enough that the whole thing just explodes. It's excessive pressure, the bottle isn't contained. It's why we say to use the correct bottles, right? So that's why that's why I do this step. It is kind of optional. If you're just doing a small batch and you can keep it all in the fridge, the coolness of the fridge is enough to slow the fermentation process that bottle bombs just don't happen in the fridge because it's too cold, long and short of it. But this yields you I hesitate to say shelf stable because this process has the potential to fail, but for my purposes and in my house with the system I've used, I found it to be close enough to shelf stable to just not matter. So what is pasteurization? Pasteurization is heating something up to a temperature for a period of time to kill enough of the bacteria, in this case yeast, that while not sterile, is now clean enough. So hopefully that's kind of giving you a bit of the background and context to this step. And so I'll show you what I have set up here. Also alternatively, if you've done your gravity readings enough and you're okay with a very dry ginger beer, you can have the fermentation stop naturally because the yeast have run out of sugar. So you'll be left with a very dry but shelf-stable ginger beer. If you want to Google it further, they call that fermenting to dry. That should help you out. Anyway, I'll run you through my process that I have here. So, what I have here is I'll bring it a little bit closer so you can see. Let's just quickly check. Yeah, sick. So what I have here is I have an esky or a drinks cooler. And they normally keep things cool, but they do just as well keeping things warm. And I have a few bottles here, another fermentation that I've done as well. And I have put them into the drink cooler. I've put some water into it, as you can see. And here I have a sous vide machine, or an immersion circulator, I think they call them. They are expensive, that's why I say the step is kind of optional. But long and short that if you want to be doing this on a regular basis and be more sure about your processes, you're going to need to get one of these. So I fill it with water, right? I have one spare bottle that actually doesn't have any alcohol in it. But what I do is I fill it with water, so that acts as an analog for the fluid in the other bottles. And then to effectively measure the temperature inside the bottles, because that's what matters, let's just bring it up and show you. I have a thermometer inside it that I can use to read the internal temperature of the bottle. And that functions very well. So I set my immersion circulator going. I'm not going to tell you the numbers and such because you can find pasteurization tables, how long and at what temperature online very easily. That's not my business. But what's it? Hey, Colin. Oh, sorry.
Oh, is that the ginger beer?
I'm doing the sort of tutorial video on how to make it. So, because people here ask me how to do it, I'm like, oh great, I'm going to do a video. That's why this has been up all these weeks. So people go, how do you make it? I can just go, here's the video.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah. So. I might stop that. Okay. So, is that the one? Yeah, it should be just fine. Okay. Before I was interrupted. Don't cut. So, my setup here is I have my brew bottles and my temperature bottle in my esky. I'm going to set my temperature, do my best to insulate it, because any heat loss is just wasted energy. You can just keep the lid, just anything you can do. An old blanket will do. If you're using an immersion circulator, be careful, it kind of needs air and space. And you want to set your temperature. Mine was 65, you can work out how long that is for you. Now, the important trick here though is this, you don't start timing because pasteurization is a function of temperature and time. But you don't start timing until your measurement bottle hits the target temperature. This thing will say, oh, I've hit 65 degrees. But that only counts for the water outside the bottle, not the fluid within it. So you'll start your immersion circulator, put this thing on top, and then let it go. And then when you hit your target temperature in your bottle, start timing. And when you've sustained that temperature for the amount of time as required by the figure you've seen in your pasteurization table, it can be anywhere from 4 hours to 30 seconds, depending on what you want to do. I'm not going to make recommendations there. It's easy enough to Google. When you hit that, you can, once you hit your target time and temperature, you can just, I like to leave it in for the extra time, but that's your brew pasteurized and you're left with a shelf-stable ginger beer.
yeah, I hope you enjoy it. If you do have any questions, chuck them in the comments. I usually respond pretty quickly. If you brew it, absolutely let me know. I've had some people who said that the ginger flavour is a bit too strong for them. I will let you know that my recipe does slap you in the face with it. That's how I like my ginger beer. If you don't, use less ginger. But that's about the gist of it. Best of luck, happy travels, and I think you're a beautiful human being.